What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. I'm super excited to do this video because you probably saw it from the thumbnail or from the title. We're going to be talking about the new Lisa Eldridge launch. I always wait for Lisa Eldridge launches. I do budget for these Lisa Eldridge launches, but this one was a particularly exciting one to me. Of course, most of you guys know that's why you guys are here. She launched 5 new eyeshadow palettes. Now I knew she was gonna launch eyeshadow palette or palettes. I wasn't sure how many. Like I said, I did budget for it. I didn't budget for 5. So when I asked you guys which one you wanted to see, I wanted to get 3 and I ended up with all of them. I know, this is the most I've ever spent on makeup in one go, so it did kind of intimidate me. For me, this was the equivalent of going all in. Like, you don't know if this palette's gonna suck, you hate the formula that she created, but you know what? I saw the Lisa Eldridge video and I was excited. Let's risk it. I'm gonna get all of them. So I'm gonna have some timestamps down below, also somewhere here, so you guys could maybe just move on to the palette that you really want to see. I demo all of them, and I did do a demo, like a full demo, so I didn't do just half an eye and half an eye. I was quite ambitious with it this time around. I also swatched it. I did some comparison swatches to the most relevant ones in my collection. Before I start, I do have a Lisa Eldridge playlist. I do review Lisa Eldridge quite a bit. You can check out my playlist after you see this video. The most noteworthy video that I want to recommend is the one where I show 8 of my liquid lyricists. I demo them together with my 8 lipsticks that I have. I currently have 9 lipsticks because next to the 5 palettes, I also bought 1 lip liner and 1 lipstick. Nothing you see here is sponsored by Lisa Eldridge. I bought everything with my own money. You see that my channel is very small, so most likely Lisa Eldridge has no idea who I am, and I am happy to review these. This is definitely my choice. I'm so excited to have these in front of me, and I've tried to film it throughout the entire day. Most of you guys that are subscribed know that I film when my son is asleep, so I film on Wednesdays to get the video out on Thursdays. And because this took so long, because I wanted to demo on both eyes, you do see the lighting change a little bit. So I do a combination of natural and synthetic lighting because right now during the more colder months in the Netherlands, it's quite, you know, it's very gray toned everywhere. So I have to use the synthetic light or else you just don't see the colors the way that they are. So in this launch, she launched new eyeshadow palettes, 5 of them. Like I said, I got all of them, and she launched a few lip liners with complementary lipsticks, and she launched brushes. If you bought 3 items, you did get a free pouch, so I did pick up the free pouch. This feels velvet. It has the logo on top. It's, I believe, the color of Velvet Pompadour, which is one of her newer lipsticks. It's very pink. It's not very me, but I like it. It definitely like brings out the girly in me. So I did pick up one of those. Each palette comes in a component that is very Lisa Eldridge on brand. All of them I paid 59 euros for, and all of the palettes contain 6 shades. Over the 5 palettes, there are 6 different finishes. That means that each palette is curated individually, so it doesn't mean that all 6 formulas are in each single palette. And all of them have a 24-month shelf life. They're made in Italy, and each contain a net weight of 5.4 grams. Although the weight doesn't make it feel like it's very luxe, it still feels very luxe. It's the same as their lipsticks when it comes to their packaging, and they're quite easy to open. Next to the fact that this is cruelty-free, free of microplastics, and talc-free, all of these are refillable, so there are little holes at the back that you can refill the palette, and that's really what set this collection to me apart, even though they look like shades that we've seen before. I won't recite Lisa Eldridge's video too much, but she did mention that she wanted to make them refillable because she is a makeup artist and sometimes she has all these singles put together, and that's how she likes to use these palettes. And instantly when I saw these palettes and I saw that you could buy the singles, I thought, oh my god, I would love to create my own like absolute palette, or even switch out seasonal shades, you know what I mean? So make my own seasonal palette every single season. I got really inspired by this collection. I really like the way Lisa Eldridge talks about each and every single one of these palettes. I got even more excited after I saw her demo it and talk about it. So let's just get into the video. First, talk about the Muse palette. Now, all of these palettes come in this beautiful packaging. It's very Lisa Eldridge style-esque, and there are 6 shades in here. The Muse palette is described as a harmonious assemblage of rosy hues. Muse is a painterly washed world of romance. Altogether, it has 4 different finishes. It has Tea Room, which is described as a soft pink apricot. It has Tomorrow's Party, which is a metallic burnt warm rose. It has Vintage Mulberry, which is a deep plum brown. It has Love in Venice, which is a luminous rose gold. Cherubim, which is a muted clay pink. And Taffeta Fan, which is a delicate pearly champagne. Tea Room, Vintage Mulberry, and Cherubim are all velvet. The velvet formula she describes as a velvet matte, which feels like a cream smoothing on the lid. Furthermore, there's a metallic in here, which is described as a densely packed full coverage opaque metallic. There's a luminous in here, which is described as a medium pale semi-transparent eyeshadow. And if you apply this with a finger, it should create a really beautiful wet looking eyeshadow. Lastly, there is a luster in here. The luster is described as something with a full opacity but with tiny pearls, so a pearl sheen look. Of course, this looks like a Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Dreams and Pillow Talk Original palette, so I did swatch it against Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talks, both of them, and I wanted to swatch this and compare it to the Natasha Denona Mini Biba palette. Both of these are very rose tone palettes. A lot of you guys probably have rose tone palettes in your collection like I do, but I just wanted to make the comparison. These were quite dupable in my collection. I think the difference will definitely be in the formulation of this, so let's just get into the demo. I noticed, by the way, that the way that these shadows are inserted, it's not the same as it's mentioned on the back, so I'm gonna have to use the website, so I'm sorry you're gonna see me reading off the website sometimes because I don't want to like mispronounce the name accidentally. But first I went into Tea Room, which is that apricot shade. This leaned quite pink and it was very buildable. You definitely saw some pigment and it was very blendable. Next, I went into this shade. I believe this one is called Cherubim, and I wanted to deepen out my crease area, and these two layered together beautifully. This one definitely offset that Barbie look and made it more rose toned. To deepen out the outer corner V, this one is called Vintage Mulberry. Beautiful mulberry shade, a very Bordeaux looking. I really like that shade. Definitely this velvet formula. I like the cream to powder formulas. They didn't have that crazy pigment like the Charlotte Tilbury Dreams palette. Some of you guys like the more pigmented shades. I like the fact that like this is very blendable and you can build it up to a more pigmented look. Not only was it buildable, I thought it was just very easy to use, very beginner friendly. To give some dimension to the outer corner, I went into this shade. This is Tomorrow's Party. This is the only metallic in this palette, and I really like the metallic formulation. Let me just say that right now. I wanted to go all over the lid with the luminous rose gold shade. I was hoping this was going to be the star of the palette. Finger swatch, it does look very wet. It just didn't translate on me on my lids. I feel like I saw my lid color peeking through so much. I didn't really like it. It took me a while to build. I much prefer the metallic formula in my opinion. Then I went into Taffeta Fan, which is a luster, which is a beautiful pearly champagne. I love a good champagne color, and I put that in the inner corner and of course my brow bone area. I personally really like the look that came out with, and of course I matched it together with the Muse lipstick and lip liner that I have in my collection, and I love that kind of monochromatic look that it gave. It's just such a very wearable and pretty palette. If you are into pink tones and you are wanting to try this formulation out, I definitely don't think this is a complete dud of a palette. I just think that one shadow wasn't really for me. I see where she was going with it. It's just I don't like seeing my lid color peeking through. Then the second palette that I went into was definitely the palette that I was most excited about, and this is the Cinnabar palette. Cinnabar lipstick, by the way, is one of my favorite lipsticks across the board. It's like that lip color that I use for the fall. So I loved having this palette to pair with my Cinnabar lip liner and lipstick. The Cinnabar palette is described as a powerful, warm toned of a Cinnabar eyeshadow palette, as if they were drawn from the earth itself. It's rich in composition of a warm base shades that deliver a myriad of looks from light caramel to intense deep earthy browns and lustrous bronze. She was inspired by the ancient natural pigments of the earth, particularly historic paint colors and art. You have the shade Raw Sienna, which is a light caramel, Bronzite, which is a rich warm bronze, Fired Earth, which is a deep warm earth brown, Lost Lost Summer, which is a warm copper, Deep Ochre, which is a rich earthy brown, and Ritual, which is a soft light gold with warm sparkling pearls. There are a few different finishes in here. There is a seamless matte finish. The seamless matte finish is described as a blendable low-level luminosity. There is a minute amount of pearls in the matte to help it blend better, and this should have a traditional powder feel. There's of course the metallic finish, the velvet finish, and this one has a top coat. So the last color, Ritual, is a top coat. This is described as a transparent base, multicolored glittery with pearls. I was definitely interested in this palette. This one was gonna be mine no matter what, and I love the look of this. I kind of wanted to keep the looks the same, so the first thing that I did is I went into that lighter shade called Raw Sienna, and I put it all over my crease area. Then I wanted to deepen out the crease area with the shade Deep Ochre. Like in the first look, I went into Fired Earth to deepen out the outer corner to get that smoky eye look. I wanted to put Bronzite, this color is so beautiful, I wanted to put it all over the lid, so that's kind of what I did to show you guys what it looks like all over the lid. I'm not really into copper colors, so I was trying to keep the copper to a minimum and put it on the bottom lash line. So I put Lost Summer all the way in the bottom lash line, and of course I topped it off with that beautiful topper shade. Before we continue on, I had a ton of palettes to compare this to. You know, you have the Patrick Ta Major Dimensions 1 palette, Guerlain Royal Jungle palette. When I saw this, that it might look a little bit like the Natasha Denona Mini Bronze palette, but the Mini Bronze definitely leans way more copper / orange toned, and this one leans way more brown toned in my opinion. I find brown tones more flattering on me, so I would prefer this over the Mini Bronze palette, but the Mini Bronze formulation or the Natasha Denona formulation is of course again way more pigmented. Overall, if you're a warm toned lover like I am, you're not gonna hate this palette. None of these shades actually performed bad in my opinion. I thought the look came out easy, it was so blendable, really great. It was buildable, so it's definitely not the same as a Natasha Denona shadow. Keep that in mind. It wasn't as metallic as the Glam Face Light palette, and it wasn't as pigmented as the Mini Bronze palette. This was definitely more buildable. There was enough difference between the mattes for them to be in here. It doesn't look like there's much of a difference when you see them all together, but definitely the Raw Sienna color is a really nice base color if you just want to contour the eye a little bit. You can build up the colors really well with these two other mattes. Bronzite, such a stunning color, definitely a color for me. I like a good top coat. I think that most people, if you don't like maybe the Dior top coat, you can compare it to the Guerlain top coat. To me, it was very similar to the Guerlain. So on the top, you'll see Lisa Eldridge, and on the bottom, you'll see the Guerlain one. When you're looking at top coats, because they don't have a lot of opacity, it is a little bit difficult to see. Those two, compared to each other, are the closest in comparison. I think Guerlain packs a little bit more sparkle than the Lisa Eldridge formulation, but again, everything is buildable. Then the next palette I went into is the Vega palette. This is a palette that people actually voted that they really wanted to see, and honestly, I'm not much of a cool tone girl when it comes to eyeshadows, but nevertheless, this was the winner. You guys wanted to see this one, and it looks so much better in person. There are some shades in here that quite intimidated me, but let's just first look at the shade names. So you have this beautiful color called French Gray, which is a light neutral stone. You have next to that Smoke and Mirrors, which is a medium deep cool gray slate. Then you have Moon Swirl, which is a cool silvery mink taupe. Turbulence, which is a cool medium brown. Supernova, which is a silver with rose pink and silver sparkles. And Lamp Black, which is a true black. There's multiple finishes in here. There's a velvet, there's 3 seamless mattes, there's 1 luminous and 1 metallic in here. This is a very matte heavy palette, so there's only 1 luminous and 1 metallic in here. Since I'm not a cool tone eyeshadow girl, I definitely wasn't sure which palettes I should compare it to, so I believe I compared it to the Wayne Goss palette. This was a palette called Smoky Quartz. They're kind of like cool tone sisters to each other. And the other cool tone palette I have in my collection is a Charlotte Tilbury palette. This is the Golden Goddess palette. The one I forgot to swatch, by the way, is this one by Chanel. This is the Brun and Rose palette. So maybe I can do that right now. I think overall, the Lisa Eldridge one leans a bit more gray toned than the Tweed palette by Chanel, the Brun and Rose 4. darker tweed palette, but I feel like you could get a pretty similar vibe look from it. Like the first two demos, I went into a color for my crease area, so I went into the French gray color. This again is a velvet, so a formulation that I really enjoyed. After the velvet, I wanted to deep out my crease with Turbulence and a seamless matte, and I loved the combination of these two. If you like to have a contoured eye, I think these two are the one for you. They blended together seamlessly. I then went into Lamp Black, and I wanted to do kind of a liner look, but I wanted to do a thick line. And this is definitely nicely pigmented. If you had like a liner and you smoked out your liner with this deep black, I think it would look really nice. I use this as a liner, but I use Smoke and Mirrors to kind of blend out that liner work, because Smoke and Mirrors is kind of a scary color to me. It is a gray slate, but I feel like it has so many blue tones in there. I was very intimidated by this color. Of course, I wanted to put Moon Swirl all over the lid because that color just looked like gunmetal beauty. It looks absolutely awesome. And of course, I want to top it off with a Luminous Supernova. The Luminous honestly is still not my favorite formulation, but this one definitely complemented the look really nicely. And this time I also put the Luminous in the inner corners of my eyes and of course my brow bone area. Altogether, it looks like a really beautiful cool toned palette and a cool toned lover's dream. I topped this look off together with my lip liner in Fawn and the velvet lipstick in, of course, the shade Fawn. I thought the look looked beautiful, wearable. It was again very easy to use, easy to blend. Again, the Luminous is not my favorite formulation, but this time around I definitely feel like it fit the look. Honestly, for a cool tone palette, and even though I'm not a cool tone lover, most of these shades, because they have brown tones in here, for example these two, yeah, I really like them for kind of contouring the eyes. I can imagine me curating a palette using some of these shades as my ultimate palette. I wore that palette for about 3 hours because my kid did wake up, and it wore pretty nicely throughout the day. I did go for a long walk together with my dog and my son, and I like the pigments. I felt like my eyeshadow wasn't gone at some point. Sometimes my eyes like to eat away at eyeshadows. That didn't happen. I did take off all of my makeup before I went into the next palette. And the next palette I wanted to show was a palette I wasn't going to pick up. The Myth eyeshadow palette. Now, so many of you guys wanted to see this palette, and I get it now. I see it in person and I'm like, okay, this looks beautiful in person. It's described as a synergy of a decadent color from a lavender gray and smoked amethyst to a pure violet. The Myth palette takes inspiration from the Mauve Decade and Victorian Gothic hues. Myth has Nocturama, which is a deep black and violet, Illusionism, which is a transparent base with ultraviolet sparkly pearls, Mauve Decade, which is the muted gray lavender, Faded Amethyst, which is a smoke lustrous taupe amethyst, Victorian Trim, which is a rich and brown vibrant mulberry, and Violet Stone, which is a pure violet. Again, this palette has a few different finishes. For velvet, so this is a very velvet heavy palette. It has Illusionism, which is a top coat, and it has one metallic. I don't have this many palettes that are purple toned, except for my 1947 Dior palette that recently came out from the Mille Fury collection. That one was very comparable, and they both have a top coat, so you can kind of see the top coat of Dior and the top coat of Lisa Eldridge kind of swatched together. How I did the look for this one, I wanted to do it a little bit different. I did go into Mauve Decade first to just lay some base around my crease area. I then wanted to line a little bit, so I used Nocturama to line and Violet Stone to blend out that line. At the outer corner, I wanted to use Faded Amethyst just to show you guys what the metallic looks like. But I wanted to have the star of the show, which is Illusionism, which is the top coat, and put it all over the lid. I wasn't sure about Victorian Trim, but I did wanted to show you guys. So I did put it on the bottom lash line together with some of those deeper colors, so you could at least see what it looks like. And all together, it looks for a very pretty palette. All of these purples performed really nicely, which is, you know, rare for a purple eyeshadow to perform nicely, but they really did. I really like the look that I came up with, and I topped it off with my fake liner by Victoria Beckham Beauty. I wasn't sure about the lipstick that I chose. I wasn't sure about Je ne sais quoi, but I kind of just went with it. This was the look that I came up with. What do you guys think? Last but not least is the palette that is of course on my face, and this is the Party Palette. This is the crescendo that we all have been working for, and it's the Sorcery Palette. Both Myth and Sorcery currently are sold out, and I totally get it. These two are definitely the stars of the show. The palette is inspired by the medieval tales and legends. Sorcery is a story of the magician's fairs and fantasy of the Middle Ages. Troubadour, a deep inky teal, Grotto, a rich emerald green, Madrigal, a blackened antique green gold, Mercurial, a prismatic green to heather duochrome, Mage, which is a pale silvery sage green gray with icy blue, pink, gold, and green pearls, Swan Song, which is a rich sapphire blues. This is a very metallic heavy palette. It has one seamless matte, 4 metallics, and 1 luminous, which is that duochrome, and definitely a shadow that I wanted to get as an individual. I usually don't go for these palettes. It did remind me of a Dior palette that I didn't pick up and definitely regretted, which is the Nightbird palette. It also reminded me of a Barredo palette, and I don't have many palettes like this in my collection. I did compare one of the shades to my 2 lid lusters by Victoria Beckham Beauty to show you what these 2 shadows look like. I did get the lid luster in Velvet shade over here. It looks a lot like the Velvet lid luster. So if you're interested in that lid luster, you haven't picked it up, but you do want to get one of these palettes, you can see the swatches over here. Now for this palette, I didn't know what to do. I figured let's just go into the matte base first and then let's go from there. So I went into the matte base, the Troubadour color, very beautiful, deepen out the outer corner, kind of take it up all the way to the crease. Then I went into Grotto on the outer corner to just build up that green, so beautiful. And I wanted to use this Madrigal color all over the lid. For the inner corners, I used Mage. For the bottom lash line, I used Swan Song, and of course to top it all off, I used Mercurial all over the lid, and this is the look that I came up with. Now the Sorcery Palette did come with a new lipstick, and I did get the new lipstick as well, and the lip liner to go with it. I'll put the prices down below of the lip liner and the lipstick when I demo them. If you've never seen these lipsticks before, they are velvet lipsticks, so they do have a velvet texture on the side of them. They also come with that beautiful same type of packaging. The line is very cohesive like that. The lipstick is currently sold out, but let's just talk about it. It's a bewitching medium dusky clay rose borrows a little cool toned mauve magic from the 90s. It's the indie it girl from the True Velvet. Do swatch it against my Velvet Affair, Velvet Fawn, and Velvet Muse. So you see that they're from the same family, but this is sort of the cooler toned sister, and it gives for a much more grungy look, or in my opinion, grungy look. The lip liners are definitely a win for me. They're quite long wearing, and Lisa Eldridge does these unique shades really well. She really works with undertones, and I would definitely recommend, if you're looking at these velvet lipsticks, to also get the liner with it, even though it's a little bit expensive. I do feel like it's worth it. When it comes to the velvet formula, my Velvet Affair broke not so long ago, and they did send a new one to me once I contacted the customer service, even though the lipstick was nearly a year old. The customer service is absolutely amazing. Because these lipsticks are so pigmented, they are prone to break, because they'll get a little bit more fragile during shipping. If yours has broken, even though it's been like a year, you can still contact the customer service and ask them for a new one. I did, and they gave me a new one, and it was absolutely amazing. And I live in Europe, so I don't have to pay taxes. So keep that in mind. If you do live in Canada or you live in the US, you might still have to pay for customs. Nevertheless, the velvet formula is absolutely amazing. I just had dinner, that's why the lighting changed again. And this is what's left on my lips after dinner, and it still looks really great. So formula wise, I actually think the lipsticks are a really great formula, same as the lip liner. I was just really hesitant in getting another one because I wanted to see how my lipsticks were holding up, the ones that I already have in my collection. Then when it comes to the eyeshadow palettes, let's talk a little bit about formulation. First off, the packaging looks absolutely stunning. I think it's just really true to Lisa Eldridge's aesthetics, and I'm so happy that she chose for smaller palettes because I'm a smaller palette girl. I'm also so happy that she chose for these, you know, refillable pans, because I love, for example, the Olivia Palermo palettes. They kind of, you know, reminded me of each other. This is also a 6-pan palette that has multi finishes in it. They reminded me of each other because they both look very luxe, but they're smaller palettes. The Olivia Palermo palette is so much heavier. This is lethal. You can use it as a weapon, and it's not refillable, and I hate that that palette is not refillable because the packaging is so beautiful. I like the idea that this is refillable. I think it's true to her and who she is, because she is a makeup artist, and it makes sense that she wants to, you know, curate each palette for every client that she has. I think it's user friendly. She really understands her customer. It's really up my alley. I think the launch in itself, it's an incredible launch, and all of the palettes all of the palettes were incredibly wearable. She does tones really well, and she really hyped me up with her stories regarding the palettes that I feel good. Even though I spent so much money, I feel good about getting all of the palettes. When it comes to the formulation, I like the velvet formula a little bit more than the seamless matte. I noticed that I did have a little bit of fallout with the seamless matte, so keep that in mind. I would definitely, if you hate fallout, do your foundation last, do your eyes first. It really wasn't bad. And you see me doing the demos, and if you didn't see it, that means it was so little fallout, but I do feel like I need to mention it. I also really like the metallic formulation, and I really like the topper formulations. Those three were definitely my favorite formulations out of all. My least favorite was that luster formulation. It just wasn't my vibe. I feel like she did execute what she said she was going to do, but maybe I just don't like the look on me. I don't like a semi-sheer coating. I like it to be opaque or completely sheer like a topper. The lusters are always very soft in the pan, so I also feel like they like to be picked up with a finger, and I like to be able to pick up something with a brush as well. In terms of comparing them to you know, big competitors such as Natasha Denona or Charlotte Tilbury or Pat McGrath even, because I do have some Pat McGrath in my collection. Pat McGrath and Natasha Denona are high pigmented shadows that blend really well. I think for both, you could go overboard with the amount of pigment and then you just blend and blend and blend. These are a little bit more buildable, if you know what I mean. So you start with a little bit of less pigment and then you build upwards instead of downwards, if that makes sense, at least in my experience. Formulation wise, I do think they're vastly different, but not enough different that I don't think that the same customer couldn't enjoy both. I know that some people that love Pat McGrath will probably hate Chanel or Dior eyeshadow palettes, and these are not as sophisticated soft as a Dior or Chanel palette. These are a little bit more buildable, pigmented, and I feel really user-friendly. I'm not a makeup artist. I like dummy-proof makeup, and none of the looks that I did today, I felt like I had no skill or something. You know what I mean? All the looks came out together the way that I wanted in my head. So my recommendation would actually be to get the palette that suits you the most. So the one that you think, oh, that's the one I really wanted, but I might want to customize it. Then you get that palette, you get a few singles, and then you customize the palette to your needs. I think that's the best way to do it. So if, for example, you are a deeper complexion, but you like the Muse palette, I can imagine that you might want to have even deeper tones in there, so you can kind of play a little bit with a smoky eye. I like the formulation. I think the looks turn out beautiful, and I think this last look, so this Sorcery Palette, even though it's sold out right now, I actually think is the winner out of all of them. Personally, I really enjoyed the Cinnabar palette. This is my thing. I like brown toned, warm leaning neutral palettes. So this one is probably going to be the one on top for me. I might switch out this one for a beautiful inner corner highlight like this one in the Myth palette. This is a nice champagne color, and I feel could be used in any of these palettes. The Muse palette is pretty, don't get me wrong. It has a few different finishes. I did get a pretty look out of it, but it's probably the palette that I'll reach for least. And I think the Vega palette is currently not my vibe, but I like having a little bit more cool tone palettes in my collection. What I would love to do in the future, in the near future, is maybe do a, you know, Hannah Louise posts and she often curates her own palette with her single shadows. I would love to do that as well, but then on camera. If you guys would like to see that, please let me know. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna round up the video here. It's been an incredibly long day. Like 9 hours ago, I showed the first palette on camera, and now it's 7:30 at night. It's completely dark. The lighting has changed throughout the entire video. It's been a long day. You know I do this in between my son's nap time, so it's been an extremely long day. I loved doing this video. I hope I can get this video out as soon as possible. I hope it was useful, and if it was, please make sure to press a like. If you have any questions regarding any of these palettes, make sure to comment down below, or you just want to comment on the looks. Also, make sure to comment down below. I love nerding out about makeup, and this is such a great launch to nerd out on, so don't leave me hanging. Also, if you like Lisa Eldridge, I am going to follow her in 2023 as well. Lisa Eldridge comes with a few big launches per year, and I just love everything she puts out. I feel like there's so much thought into it, and I would love to try out more from the brand. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna end the video here. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!